Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Frank King. Frank King, suicide prevention speaker and trainer, was a writer for The Tonight Show for 20 years. Depression and suicide run in his family. He's thought about killing himself more times than he can count. He's fought a lifetime battle with major depressive disorder and chronic suicidality, turning that long, dark journey of the soul into the 5 TEDx Talks and sharing his life-saving insights on mental health awareness with associations, corporations, and colleges. A motivational public speaker who uses his life lessons to start the conversation, giving people permission to give voice to their feelings and experiences surrounding depression and suicide, and doing it by coming out, as it were, and standing in his truth and doing it with humor. He believes that where there is humor, there is hope, and where there is laughter, there is life. Nobody dies laughing. The right person at the right time with the right information can save a life. Welcome to the podcast, Frank.
Welcome, and that's all the time we have for today. So thank you very much.
That is awesome. So we met through a mutual friend, Amy Lyle.
Oh, Amy. Oh, my God.
Yes. And I know she has a TEDx talk coming up if she hasn't already done it already.
Yes.
Has she done her TEDx talk yet, or she just got accepted?
Let's see. I think she may have recorded it virtually. I don't know. Do you want the backstory on Amy? Okay.
Yes.
So Amy and I met on LinkedIn. So we're chatting away. And I was actually at the scene of my 5th TEDx talk, Durango, Colorado at the time. And Amy said, "Oh, I wish I'd met you 2 weeks ago. I didn't know you coached TEDx. I just signed up with a company for a huge amount of money to get a TEDx." And so I said, "Oh, how much did you pay?" And she told me, and I thought, wow, I am way underpriced. So I have thousands and thousands of dollars to thank Amy for. So fast forward, a couple of months later, I got a phone call from her. And she had applied with the help of this company for 80 TEDx talks, and no auditions, no callbacks, no talks. And she was practically in tears. And I said, "Well, Amy, it's a good topic. It's a great idea. You've got a bestseller on failure on Amazon in the category where there's some other pretty well-known authors. I just can't understand why they won't pick you." I said, "Well, send me your, the stuff you put on your application," that the company had cobbled together for her. And I'm sure all the I's were dotted, the T's were crossed, but it didn't really sing. I said, "Would you mind if I tinker with it?" So she goes, "No, fine." So bear in mind, she said 80 tries at this point. So I tinkered with it, added my little creative touch, a little humor. And within 5 applications, she got that TEDx up in Massachusetts. So that's, but yeah, I had no idea till I talked to Amy how much people charge to help other people get a TEDx. And I'm not charging as much, but still, I would not be where I am. I've got 13 TEDx coaching clients, and I would say the majority of those are thanks to Amy Lyle.
Yes. And Amy Lyle was actually on this podcast about a year ago, and she has her own show. So
yep,
anybody who wants to look up her show, they can. And a very funny show because she's also a comedian.
Correct. Yep. That's something else we had in common. Yeah, The Burbs, something about The Burbs. And I've been on.
In The Burbs.
The Burbs,
yes.
Yep.
In The Burbs.
So she had me on.
Yeah, but just so people can get to know you, why don't you talk about yourself, where you started out, how you got to be doing what you're doing now?
My favorite subject, Kimberly, me.
Everybody's favorite subject.
That's what was it that I think was it not W. Clement Stone who wrote When Friends and Dale Carnegie said everybody's favorite subject. I think it was Dale Carnegie.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's good advice, by the way. When I meet somebody, I always ask leading questions. I never really say much about myself unless they ask. I've done 4-hour, 5-hour plane flights, and finally, as we're landing, they go, "What do you do?" And I go, "I'm a comedian." They go, "You're not that funny." I said, "Well, I'm off the clock." Get your checkbook out. We'll yuck it up. So anyway, I started comedy in the 4th grade. I told a joke. with the help of my teacher. She didn't know she was helping me, being my straight woman, but she was.
Mhm.
And everybody in the class laughed, and she excused herself to go to the teacher's lounge. And years later, her name Mrs. Dark. I saw her in the Winn-Dixie. I'm from the South. That's a big grocery store chain, at least it was
Mhm.
at the time. And Ms. Dark said, Frank, do you know why I excused myself to go to the teacher's lounge that morning after everybody started laughing? I said, Ms. Dark, I have no idea. She said, because what you said to me was the funniest thing a child had ever said to me before or since. And I was afraid if I laughed in your face, I'd break your heart.
Aw.
Yep. So I decided at that moment in fourth grade, I was going to be a comedian. And then in 12th grade, I had been taking 3 years of drama
Mhm.
and never gotten a good part, always in the chorus.
Mhm.
And so I thought to myself, second semester senior year, I think I see a pattern here. And they just so happen we're having a senior talent show, do it once a year, obviously. And I thought, you know what? If I do stand up, I can write, direct, produce, and star in my own little show every night.
Mhm.
First person ever, this is 1975, the spring of 75, first person ever to do stand up at the senior talent show. You know, mostly it was accordion players and folk dancers and that kind of
Right.
thing. And so, yeah, it wasn't a tough contest to win. So I won it. And then I told my
Mhm.
mama, I'm going to be a comedian. And
Mhm.
my mother comes from a long line of college educated folks. And she goes, son, you going to college first. I don't care what you do when you get done. You can be a goat herder for all I care, but you, son, are going to be a goat herder with a college degree. So I went to UNC Chapel Hill, 4 years, BABS, graduated. My high school and college sweetheart and I moved to San Diego to get married. We should never have gotten married. We had nothing in common, but you know what they say, opposites attract. She was pregnant, I wasn't. So we moved to San Diego, and just by chance, and I was working in the insurance business because that was her vision for me, and was not doing what I thought I should be doing, going to open mic night. There was a branch of the world famous Comedy Store, the one up on Sunset in LA, in San Diego, La Jolla, it's a little suburb.
Mhm.
And they had 2 open mic nights a week, and it was killing me not going. And I realized at some point, because I live with major depressive disorder and chronic suicidal ideation, that if I didn't change something and quickly, I was going to kill myself sooner rather than later, because I was not, my wife was lovely, but not meant to be together. Insurance is a great business, but it really wasn't for me. And so my second thought was, well, wait a minute. I could quit my job, divorce my wife, try comedy. If it works, great. If it doesn't, I can still kill myself.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's why that's the subject of my 4th TED Talk, Suicide, the Secret of My Success, Dead Man Talking.
Mhm.
So, and I thought, as many people with mental illness do, that I'm the only person in the world that ever had those thoughts. Well, I've met a number of comedians, other entertainers, entrepreneurs who had the very same thought process. They're living a life they're sure that is not theirs, with people they really shouldn't be with, and they've got this dream, and they realize, if I don't change, I'm going to kill myself. Well, what the heck? There are a few things more powerful on the planet than somebody with absolutely nothing to lose. If I stayed put, I died. If I tried comedy, it might work.
Mhm.
But if it didn't, I can still kill myself. So suicide, sadly, is one of my superpowers. I went up on stage. I did 5 minutes. And inside my head, I heard this: you're home. I've only heard that several times, 3 times in my life, but I knew I was in the right place, right time. And my second thought was, I'm going to do this for a living. I have no idea how.
Mhm.
And if I'd known how hard it was to make a living doing stand-up comedy, I might never have tried it. I thought about doing a keynote called, "What Could You Do If You Didn't Know No Better?" Which I didn't know how hard it was. I was just,
Uh-huh.
so December of 85, I said to my girlfriend, my first wife and I had split up, said to my girlfriend, I'm going on the road to do stand-up comedy professionally. Do you want to come along? Fully anticipating she'd go, oh, hell no. And she goes, yeah. So we quit our jobs, put all our stuff in storage, jumped in my little tiny Dodge Colt.
Mhm. Wow.
Yeah, with no air conditioning, because we live in California. You don't need air conditioning in a car in California.
Uh-huh.
And we were on the road together, 2,629 nights in a row, nonstop, no home. 7 years and change. And that was in the mid 80s to the mid 90s. And so we worked with and lived with Seinfeld, Dennis Miller, Ellen, Rosie, Dana Carvey, Kevin Nealon, Adam Sandler, so forth and so on, back when they were just comics. And then I did some radio in my old hometown of Raleigh. I got invited to apply for a job at a rock station in Raleigh, North Carolina, which gave me an opportunity to come off the road because the comedy thing was beginning to wind down, the club thing. And that lasted 18 months. I took a #1 morning show and drove it all the way to #6 in 18 months. Yeah, didn't just drive it into the ground. I drove it into Middle Earth. And I decided, because my act was clean, that I could jump to the corporate comedy market, the rubber chicken circuit after dinner, after lunch. And I did. And I made really good money. People ask me, what's the difference between club comedy and corporate comedy? About $5,000 a day plus travel. And I made that good money until the recession started. And then business began to drop off. You can't lay off a couple hundred people and hire a comedian for the Christmas party. It's not, it just doesn't look good. So by 2010, business off 80%. We lost everything in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And that's when I learned what the barrel of my gun tasted like. Literally. Spoiler alert, if you're listening, did not pull the trigger. Before the COVID, a friend of mine was at a keynote. He'd never heard me say I didn't pull the trigger. He came up afterwards. He goes, "Hey, man, how come you didn't pull the trigger?" I go, "Hey, man, could you try to sound slightly less disappointed?" If you want to know, I'll spare you the details, but it's in my first TED Talk called A Matter of Laugh or Death. It's in there. And so, yeah, I didn't pull the trigger. And when the bookings began to pick up again, the meeting planner said, "Frank, we love you dearly, but we can't pay you that kind of money just to be funny. You need to teach our audience something." And I was just, I'd always wanted to do that. I'd always wanted to make a living being funny and make a difference. But what do I have to teach anybody? So after coming that close to dying by suicide and looking at my family history, it's called generational depression and suicide. My grandmother died by suicide. My mother found her. My great aunt died by suicide. My mother and I found her. I was 4 years old. I screamed for days. It's also in my first TEDx talk. I'll spare your listeners the triggering of that. I thought, and everybody in my family, except for one cousin, is nuttier than a squirrel turd. It runs in the family. So I thought, you know what I could do? I could get some training in suicide prevention, and I could speak on suicide prevention, tell my lived experience stories, and then teach the audience something about suicide prevention. And what I discovered was, when I was preparing for the first TEDx talk, hardly anybody says the words depression and suicide out loud. It's not, as my mother would say, you don't talk about that in polite company. However, I discovered if you mention the words depression and suicide, almost everybody has a story they want to share. It's like they've just been waiting for somebody to utter the magic words. And so that led me to believe, well, if people aren't talking about it, I bet you they'll pay me to start the conversation. And that's exactly what my clients say to me. We just brought you in here to start the conversation on suicide, because by going up on stage and being vulnerable, which is another superpower. I just read Brene Brown's book on vulnerability about halfway through, and I thought, vulnerability, that's one of my superpowers.
Yes.
If I go up and be vulnerable, especially as a man, because men don't talk about that kind of thing, then other people have permission to give voice to their feelings and experiences surrounding depression, thoughts of suicide without recrimination. I do my talk, 45 minutes. I do 15 Q&A. And I tell the audience, look, if you got something you want to ask or say that you don't want to say in front of the entire audience, I'll hang around till, I've talked to everybody. And sometimes there's 2 people lined up. Sometimes there's 8. So I hang out and and so suicide prevention speaking has become it is my purpose and my passion. And it's very therapeutic. Somebody asked, does it trigger you to tell your story? No, it's very therapeutic. And here's why. With chronic suicidal ideation, every keynote I've given since 2016, except for one, there's been somebody in the audience who has chronic suicidality or chronic suicidal ideation. They don't know it has a name. They think they're just some kind of freak because of the way their brain works, and they're all alone. And I had a young woman come up after a college presentation. She goes, "Thanks for your keynote." I said, "You're welcome." She goes, "But I got to tell you, it made me weep." "How did it make you weep?" She goes, I tell this story. Here's chronic suicidal ideation in a nutshell. Because I and people in my tribe, suicide is always an option on the menu as a solution for problems large and small. And I said, small, my car broke down a couple of years ago. I had 3 thoughts unbidden: get it fixed, buy a new one, or I could just kill myself. That's chronic suicidal ideation. So she says, your story about the car, get it fixed, buy a new one, just kill yourself. She goes, I've been having those thoughts all my life. I didn't know that had a name. I thought I was some kind of freak. And when I heard you say that out loud, I realized for the first time in my life that I'm not alone, and I wept. Bingo. So that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. That's my why. It's people ask me, how'd you pick suicide as a topic? Well, tell you the truth, topic picked me. It's not a club anybody wants to join, but it's I'm hardwired for it. So sharing my story allows other people to do the same. And that's, I feel for people who have not found a purpose and a passion, because I go to bed thinking about it. I get up thinking about it. I don't have to push. I don't have to, it's like when you find your purpose and your passion, the universe goes, oh, you finally got here. Let's see if we can help you. I've met people. A friend of mine said to me, you should join the American Association of Suicidality, just for the networking benefit. So I paid my $50. I joined. This morning, I got an email from the program director for the annual national convention. Would you consider doing a 15-minute TED style talk at the opening general session in front of 2,000 people? Let's see. Yeah. And so it's those kind of opportunities that seem to just, I meet the right people, get the right opportunities. It's something about getting aligned with your purpose and your passion has a certain power to it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, and I had other speeches, networking speech, motivational speech, but 2018, January, I thought, you know what? No, I'm going to pick a lane. I'm just going to be a suicide prevention speaker. Again, that made a huge difference, because, you're a meeting planner. If it's a suicide prevention keynote you want, then if you go to my website, it screams just that and only that. This must be the guy. So yeah, so it's that's how I got into making a living and a difference. Was I came close to ending my life, and that was the pivot point, I guess, for the and my wife said the difficulty was, Kimberly, I've been a funny guy for 30 years at this point when I make this shift. And I have to rebrand, because nobody knows I can speak on a serious topic. So that's why my wife goes, get a TEDx talk. And I said famously, what's a TEDx talk? Yeah. And I got an email that week from a TEDx up in Vancouver, British Columbia. And they said, would you like to apply? Sure. So I applied, and I got my first one on the first application. And nobody in my family, none of my friends, my wife, nobody had any idea I was living with 2 mental illnesses. I came out on stage at age 56 at that TEDx as depressed and suicidal. Matter of fact, when it posted on YouTube, my wife's about to hit play. I said, hold on. I need to tell you about a half dozen things you don't know about me, and I don't want you to learn it watching the YouTube video. And, she's like, oh my God. So yeah, because people with mental illness tend to cover it up. I'm a great actor. I've got a Screen Actors Guild card for a reason. And because we don't want to burden other people, and especially with the mention of suicide out loud scares the bejesus out of neurotypical people, because A, either they don't know what to say, so they don't say anything, or B, they don't say anything because they're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing. My favorite is, well, I didn't think I was supposed to mention the word suicide in front of somebody who is depressed. And why not? I love this, because it might give you the idea. Suicide? What a great idea. Come, I didn't think of that. Anyway, that
You're already thinking about it.
Yeah, I apologize. Such a long, but we just covered like 40 years of my life.
Yes. But
so yeah, I'm a comedian by trade. I'm a comedian. Somebody said, tell me about yourself. I'm a comedian. No, not what you do, who you are. Well, at the risk of being redundant, I am a comedian. That's the way I think. I can teach you to write stand-up. I can teach you to perform stand-up. What I cannot do is teach you how to process the incoming information the way I do. And I think that's all part of I believe my depression and thoughts of suicide are the flip side of my creativity, comedic ability, imagination. I think it's all one big bump. Matter of fact, my third TEDx was Mental with Benefits, the Evolutionary Advantages of Mental Illness. Because everybody I've ever met who's not completely dysfunctional with mental illness seems to have at least one other superpower. Great writers, comedians, singers, artists, So anyway, that's a long answer to a short question. Sorry about that, Kimberly.
Yeah. So if, let's say there's someone, they do have this cycle of depression, they are thinking about killing themselves on a regular basis, how would you talk to them to help them to choose to live more day?
Or you mean if somebody said they were suicidal?
Yes.
Well, let's back up just a second, if you don't mind. Let's talk about the signs of depression, because that's where it usually begins. And the importance of this, by the way, the conversation we're about to have is this. You hear people oftentimes say, he died by suicide. We had no idea. He never gave us any clues. There were no hints. Okay. There probably were clues. There probably were hints. And here's why. 8 out of 10 people on average who are suicidal are ambivalent. They want somebody to notice something and interrupt. And 9 out of 10 give hints in the last week leading up to an attempt: direct, indirect, verbal, nonverbal, behavioral. So what you have to do is, the hints are there if you know what to look and listen for. So that's why I start with depression. So give me a couple of signs somebody may be depressed. Here's 2 of the big ones. Have trouble getting up in the morning, rally in the afternoon. So let's say you're doing your Zoom thing from home, and the group gets together once a day. And in the beginning, you did it in the morning, and the person was constantly late. So you shifted it to the afternoon, and you log on, they're there bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. It may be they're having trouble dragging themselves out of bed in the morning. The other one you can actually notice on Zoom is letting your personal hygiene go. I mean, there's COVID casual. I'm not wearing a tie and a jacket, but the shirt's clean. The hair's a little dirty. Clothes don't look like they've been washed in a while. It may be because they're struggling to get out of bed in the morning, get to the bathroom to do their shave, shower, whatever, and simply run a load of wash. Mm-hmm. So those are 2 symptoms. Here's what you don't say to somebody you think is depressed. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Turn that frown upside down. Have you tried fish oil? Can't tell you how many times. Here's what you do say. Look, I'm here for you, and I mean it. I know you're not crazy, lazy, or self-absorbed. I know that depression is a mental illness. Here's the good news. With time and treatment, things will get better. I will take the time. I will help you get the treatment. And here's the biggie. You have to ask this. And if you can't ask this, you find somebody who can. You have to ask them, are you having thoughts of suicide? Just like that. If let's say they're not forthcoming about their thoughts of suicide, but you still suspect, how would you know? Well, there are signs. Talking about death and dying, you catch them Googling death and dying. Death and dying appears as a theme in their artwork, their music, their writing, putting their affairs in order, including, and this is very dangerous, giving away prized possessions, because they want to make sure they go to the people they want them to go to when they're gone. Here's a counterintuitive one that I find extremely dangerous. They've been depressed forever, and all of a sudden they're happy for no reason. And you're happy because, thank God, they're finally happy. Well, they may be happy because they've chosen time, place, and method, and they know the pain is finite. A lot of people don't realize that most suicides are all about pain. People say, why would he want to kill himself? Chances are he didn't. Chances are he or she simply wanted to end the pain. Now, let's say they do say they're having thoughts of suicide. What do you say? Well, do you have a plan? If they have a plan, what is your plan? If it's detailed, time, place, method, you need to do your best to get them on the phone with the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Or if they're younger, you can text the word help to 741-741. It's a text line, because younger people tend to be more forthcoming in text. If they are an immediate danger to themselves or other people, you have to call 911. That's the threshold. If they're an immediate danger to themselves or somebody else, you have to call 911. Now, let's say they having thoughts of suicide, have a plan, but it's not particularly well formed. Don't really have time, place, method. What do you say? Well, and this is not in any psychology book anywhere. A psychiatrist friend and I cobbled this together. I would say to them, well, tell me, you're going to kill yourself? And if they say no, and I think this is the most important question, tell me why not. Make them give voice to whatever's keeping them here. And if you ask me, Kimberly, why not? I have a variety of reasons, but one we've already talked about. I kind of feel like George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life. Mm-hmm. I've been shown what people's lives would be like if I were not there to speak and reassure them that they're not, in fact, alone. So if I killed myself, I would take all those people with me who never got a chance for me to say, no, it's a thing. You're not alone. There's lots of us. So that would be my reason. One of my reasons why I would. So now I'm stuck here. I cannot commit suicide because
I'm so glad you're stuck here.
Oh, thank you. Well, so there are a lot of people who are, some are not, but that's another story. So that is the protocol. That's what I teach. By the way, that's what I learned. That's the teaching part of my keynote because it's called gatekeeper training, gatekeeper. you watch everybody go by as a gatekeeper, and you're looking for and listening for those tells that they may be depressed or having thoughts of suicide. And once it's like once somebody points those things out to you, you can't not hear or see them after that. And because, like I said, 8 out of 10 people ambivalent, 9 out of 10 give hints. So the good news is you can make a difference, you can save a life, and you can do it by doing something as simple as what we're doing here. And that's being brave and starting the conversation.
Thank you. And so as you were telling your story, you named all these comedians that most people know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have any good stories? I'm sure, any good stories? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wrote for Leno for a long time. And people don't know this about Jay. He's got maybe they figured this out, an amazing work ethic. I mean, he slept little. When he did this night show, for real, when he had the gig, they film in the afternoon around 4:30, 5 o'clock. And so it only takes an hour, because it's in real time. And then he would go to Burbank Airport, which is not that far away from NBC, climb on a plane, go to Vegas, do one show that night, pick up a check for $250,000, fly home. Because he just has this amazing work ethic. When he got out of community college, he had an AA in auto mechanics. So he went to the local Rolls-Royce dealership to apply for a job. And whoever the HR person was very nice and said, "Look, Jay, I appreciate your interest in Rolls-Royce, but that's not exactly the way it works with us. You have to be accepted to go to England to study at the Rolls-Royce school or whatever. And it's quite a lengthy process. And then you come back and you have the probationary period, whatever." So Jay thanked him. And he noticed as he was leaving that all of the mechanics were wearing the same blue jumpsuit. So he went to a uniform store, bought the same blue jumpsuit, went to someplace else, bought a little lunchbox. And the next morning when they opened the gates on the service area, Jay walked in his little blue jumpsuit with everybody else. And kind of wandered around a little bit until, kind of like down the line of bays where the cars were being worked on, until he got to one where he heard some guy under the hood cussing up a storm, obviously having difficulty. So he walks over, he looks into the car under the hood and says, "Yeah, they sent me over here to help you." And the guy goes, "Thank God I could use the help." So they're both under the hood. About lunchtime, Jay says he can hear the car, the service manager and the dealership manager coming across the parking lot. And what they're saying to each other is, "No, you hired him. I didn't hire him. No, you hired him. I didn't hire him." The guy, the mechanic who works there, pulls his head out from under the hood and goes, "Listen, I don't care who hires him. The kid is good and I need the help." That's how he got his first job working on Rolls Royces without having to go to England to get trained. That's just the kind of guy. Now, somebody asked about his worst gig. It was a strip club in Memphis called the Mine Shaft. He gets there. He's a comic. Yeah, I've done comedy in strip clubs. It's very difficult. He gets there and the woman goes, "It's $5 or $10. And Jay goes, "Well, I'm the comedian. I don't have to pay, but I'm just curious. What's with the 5 and 10? She goes, "$5 gets you in. $10 gets you one of these miner's caps with a flashlight on the front." And sure enough, Jay goes in and the place is completely pitch black dark, except for these guys with the hat with the flashlight. And that's how they see the stripper. They turn the flashlight toward the stripper, whichever one they want to watch. And they had Jay actually working, telling jokes on another platform while the young women were doing their strip. He says he knew he had a great joke when all the helmets would turn toward him. They bob up and down, the flashlights, as they're laughing, then back to the strippers. That's the kind of, I was on the road all that time, and there were week-long clubs. There was the Improvs and Funny Bones, really nice clubs. And then there were the horrible, beer bar, pool hall, honky-tonk one-nighters with drunks screaming, "Tell us some jokes we can dance to." Okay, here comes a slow one. You can slow dance. Yeah, it's... People ask me about doing comedy on Zoom because there's nobody in the room with you. I go, "Look, I did all these one-nighters, some of them where they didn't advertise, like 200 seats, 5 people show up. I've spent evenings talking to furniture. So staring into a camera in my living room is a piece of cake. I can fake, I laugh at my own jokes. I can make it, So yeah, it's And by the way, all those comics I mentioned, Foxworthy, Ron White, we didn't just work together. Back then, they put you up in a 3-bedroom. They called it a comedy condo. And so you would do the show, come home, pop a beer, and watch, the late night comedy shows together. So we hung out, and my lovely wife, it was like living in a frat house for her because most of the comics were guys, but they came to like her a lot. If I don't have time to have dinner and iron my pants, my wife would go, I got the iron, have some dinner. So they got to wear, and we were sort of the Junior Award Cleaver of comedy because we were married, on the road together. We were vegetarians, eat health food, went to the gym every day. And there were comics near the end of this period that would say to their manager, look, I need 3 weeks with Frank and Wendy. I need to eat good, go to the gym, get some rest. So they'd sign on to our rehab program. And yeah, because, comics, they have a higher rate of suicide than comics, entertainers, creative types. So I actually have a podcast called the Suicide Prevention Punchline, based on the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, because so many comics die by suicide. We have comics on, we talk about their struggles, how they're coping, have clinicians on to offer, advice on coping. So yeah, it's, but I think the connection is the mental illness, it's that mental illness, mental ableness, what, like I said, the flip side of my depression, suicidal thoughts is simply my creativity. So.
Yeah. So how did you get to be a writer for The Tonight Show?
Jay got the job as permanent guest host for Johnny. And Johnny was, he was top of his game and a bit mercurial. He would say to the staff on a Friday night, I'm taking next week off, which meant Monday was always what's called Best of Carson. It was a rerun. That meant Jay had 4 nights, Tuesday through Friday, 4 monologues, 18 jokes per monologue, and he had to get those jokes cobbled together over the weekend. So he got to the point where he was hiring road comics like me as contractors. You sign the contractor paperwork, they give you a fax number, and I was faxing in 2 dozen jokes a day. And so were a bunch of other guys. And then when he got the Tonight Show for real, they cut most of the contractors loose, but for whatever reason, they kept me on. And the dream was, Kimberly, and this happened to a couple of people, when Jay was a guest host, everybody's figuring when he gets the job for real, and everybody thought he would get it over Letterman, then some of us would get plucked from obscurity, as contractors and plop down into the writing team in-house at NBC and join the guild and all that. I never made it that far, but it was good practice. It's a great way to keep your comedy muscle, in tone by writing 12 to 24 jokes a day. And I had 2 jokes on his very first show when he took over for Johnny. And that was probably the highlight of my career with Jay. And he's a really nice guy. When the Tonight Show ended for him, I called him up and said, hey, would you do a little video for me, kind of pimping my corporate comedy or whatever? And he goes, yeah, I'm going to a CNBC. They don't like doing video, but tell you what we'll do. He said, I'll tell you what I will do. If you get a chance to get another morning show or some huge opportunity, and it's down to you and somebody else, one other person, call Helga, his personal assistant, give her the name and phone number, and I'll call him up, see if I can't strong arm him into giving you the job. So I've had that in my pocket for quite some time. I'm waiting for just the right opportunity to, and I may ask him to write the foreword to one of our men's mental health books. We got a series of 4 men's mental health books I'm putting together, co-author with a psychologist and a therapist. So I may ask him if he would write or just blurb the cover. Just a blurb from him for the cover would be great. I'd be willing to burn my one favor for that.
Beautiful. And then let's talk about you training people for TEDx. So we talked a little bit about Amy and how you kind of tweaked her message, but there's got to be, is it just the message, or how do people get on these stages?
First of all, they don't make it easy. It's difficult to find the links to apply. So for my clients, I provide them, many, many links to apply. And then in the application process, they try to discourage people by saying things like on the application, who do you want to nominate? That threw me the first time. I'm like, who am I going to get to nominate me? And then I realized you can always nominate yourself. So first hurdle cleared. And then if you go to the official TEDx event page on TED.com, there's no way to get to that link. Again, I teach people how to either I send them a link or teach them how to find the links to apply. You find the links. Now, the last 2 TED Talks I did, I've been chosen 7 times. 2 of them I couldn't make because I had booking conflicts. But the last 2, the 4th one was Suicide, the Secret of My Success, Dead Man Talking, and then my idea. And they called me up and said, this is TEDx Pensacola, and we want you to, participate in the TEDx. And I said, do you mean you want me to audition? They go, no, title and subtitle and your idea is good enough. You're going to be on. And the last one that I did, same story. It was called Mental Health and the Orgasm, Treat Your Depression Single-Handedly. And again, they said, no audition, you're on. Which told me, after talking to Amy, that because these committees get hundreds and hundreds of applications. I talked to a woman who used to be on the committee in Seattle for Seattle TEDx. She said, Frank, we got 600 applications a year. So it occurred to me that you have to clear that second hurdle, which is not getting thrown in the no pile right away if you want an audition. And I believe that comes down to what you put in those first boxes on the application, whether it's a really killer, title, subtitle, or sometimes they want a 10-word elevator pitch or 2 sentences to, as an overview of your idea. So whatever you put in those boxes, that's going to determine who gets the audition. So that's like with Amy. What her applications needed was a creative touch. They needed to sparkle. They needed to be sticky. They needed to make you want to read on. So I tell my clients, look, pick a title that is a little obscure. You really don't know exactly, kind of got an idea what it means, but which forces you to read the subtitle. And if they like the subtitle, usually the next question is, well, give us a couple hundred words overview. And if we can get them through that, next is, tell us why you're the person who should be doing it, another couple hundred words. And if we can get them that far, then chances are, better than even that you can get an audition. And then I help the people with the audition process, because there are certain questions they almost always ask that if you're not prepared for, can tank your chances. Like they say, well, we love the idea. Now tell me, what are you going to teach our audience? So I have my clients prepare a list of 6 bullet points, action items, able tos, how tos. And then if they get it, then it's a 12 to 18 minute talk, average 15. And we work on that to make sure that when they perform it and it posts, it gets as many views as possible. And most of these people want to be speakers, or they're already speakers and they want to, up their game. So along the way, we do speaker marketing coaching. Like, do you have a podcast? No. Well, let's get a podcast. Do you guest on podcasts? Well, you need to do that at least twice a week. Do you have a book? Do you have, it's all your social media scream the same thing. So we begin to brand you. And so that's the process. And my program's a little different than the one Amy's in. Mine is, I call it Till Death Do Us Part program. You and I work on a TEDx until you get one or we both die trying. And people seem to resonate with that, because I'm basically their coach for life at that point. Because I want to get them through the TEDx process. And if they want to speak, and most of them do, I want to help them begin to get bookings at a full fee. And I suggest they start at $5,000 plus travel. That's kind of the entry level fee nowadays for speakers. So, and a lot of them are speaking for free and this and that. So I try to get them up to that point where they can comfortably say to somebody when asked, it's $5,000 plus travel. Because that's hard to say if you've never gotten a check for $5,000. I tell them, practice in the mirror, 5,000 plus travel, 5K plus travel, $5,000 plus travel. So when you say it, it just rolls off your tongue. So, and I think all my long-term clients have gotten a TEDx or 2, except for one young woman. It's killing me. She's brilliant. She's got a great idea. We just haven't found quite the right fit. But all my long-term clients and one of my shorter-term clients got the first one she applied for. Again, title of her, she got a book called Live to Tell, because her name is Olivia. Her nickname is Liv. And she came very close to slitting her own throat. And so she wrote a book called Live to Tell. So that's the title of the TEDx. And then below that, the subtitle is Depression is Just a Visitor. And the committee went gaga over that. And so, again, I think title, subtitle has a great deal to do with who gets picked. And I tell my clients right now, a lot of people don't think the TEDx talks are happening, and many have been postponed. But I've got a dozen links right now to TEDx's in the first 2 quarters of next year, and they're planning on doing them live. They're taking applications. So it'd be a good time to apply, because I'm guessing the numbers are down because people don't think they're even happening.
Mhm.
So that's a TEDx, and I got a little subliminal message behind me here.
Yeah. Yes. If you're
But,
just listening, he has a big bright TEDx in
Yeah.
red and white behind his head.
screaming.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's and there aren't live events being booked right now. That was my bread and butter for the longest time. And so fortunately I'd already been coaching TEDx. I had a few clients. I thought I need to shift my focus and market the TEDx until, the pandemic eases, because let's say everybody got cured in January. Well, they're not going to be booking conferences until, they may book them, but they're not going to be having conferences probably till the fall, because there's always a long lead time on, big annual conferences. So that's why the TEDx, pushing the TEDx, because I can do it from my home in my bunny slippers.
All right. Sounds great. So if people wanted to work with you or they want to find you, where do they find you? Do you have a website? Do they find you on social media? That's where I found you.
Yeah, well, I'm in the witness relocation program, so they're gonna have to call the Justice Department and go to the Justice Department website and look for TEDx. So you can go to yourtedxcoach.com, yourtedxcoach.com. If you go there, there's a free PDF titled "The 6 Things You Can Do to Kill Your Chances of Landing a TEDx Talk." 6 things that you can do that'll just get you thrown in the no pile right away. The things to avoid. The Mental Health Comedian. You just type that in, or you can type the .com. But because I've worked really hard to brand myself, all my social media is The Mental Health Comedian. It's obviously my website. If you go there and you put an email address in, the books on men's mental health, the 4 books, I'm voicing them for Audible. And so on my website, The Mental Health Comedian, put in an email address. You can download an MP3 of the unabridged book, me narrating, of the first volume of, it's called Guts, Grit, and the Grind, a mental mechanics manual. So it's 4 hours and change on men's mental health. We have 3 other books. 1's already up on Amazon. Number 3 should be up shortly, and 4 will go up. It's kind of a chicken soup for the soul format, where you have 12 men. Each one has a different issue that men struggle with. And then they tell how they're coping. Because we surveyed men and said, what kind of advice would you want in the book? And they said, look, we want real men with real problems and real coping strategies. So that's why we chose to have each one tell a story. And there are 12 guys in each book. And it's not just mental health struggles. It could be bankruptcy. It could be, caring for an older parent, or a child with special needs, something where they've struggled mightily, and this is how we're coping. So
wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And
Yeah.
It's been very much fun. And also, on the serious side, great advice. And
well, I'm wagering, Kimberly, and next time I'll let you talk when we do the podcast. Somebody goes, man, you're like a pull start lawnmower. You pull that cord, as long as it's got gas in it, you just keep yakking. It's conceivable that somebody listening to the podcast right now leaned in when they heard me tell the story about get it fixed by or I could just kill myself, that they may not have realized that they had that chronic suicidality is a thing, has a name, and they're not alone. So it is conceivable. And I hope when that happens, we steer them far enough off the path of suicide, they'll live a normal life. And from the emails and DMs I've gotten from people who are in that situation, it seems that is the case. Finding out you're not alone is a piece of advice people always ask. I've got a friend who's depressed. What do I say? First of all, initially, don't say anything. Just actively listen. Just co-sign whatever nonsense they're going through. Oh, and I think if I haven't sent you my social media links and so forth, I will. In there is my phone number, my cell number. And every keynote I do, I put the cell number up on the screen. And I tell the audience, look, if you're suicidal, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline or text the text line 741-741. If you're mentally ill and have a really bad day, call a crazy person. And here's my phone number. And people call about themselves, about a loved one. It's 858-405-5653. It'll be in the show notes. And you're welcome to call. People don't call all the time, but occasionally somebody will call and say, look, my roommate in college, I've been reading his Facebook timeline and it just sounds dangerous to me. Will you take a look? And I look, and sure enough. So then we strategize. What do you do? Mm-hmm. So yeah, feel free to call if you're having a bad day. Talk to a crazy person.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that. So before we finish today, I have one last question.
Oh no.
Yes.
I'm married, but I like the way you think.
Okay. What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
I would say you need to cast about to find your purpose and your passion. And you know what, Kimberly, I've discovered is there are people who never even considered that they could make a decision like that. They never thought it was an option. When I fly with people on the plane, I always ask them what they do. And, oh, you're an attorney. Do you like that? And here's the answer. Yeah. You don't have to be a psychologist to know that's a little bit, qualified. Mm-hmm. So what I do is I say to them, well, what if I could wave a magic wand and you could do anything you wanted and still make a living? What would it be? And man, they light up. Almost everyone has something they're passionate about, but it's almost like I'm giving them permission to give voice to the thought, hey, maybe I could do that. So my favorite one is a woman's flying next to me. She sets up exhibit halls at conventions. And I ask her, do you like that? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, if I go wave a magic wand, I said, if you quit that job, does your husband make enough money so you guys get by? She goes, yeah. I said, okay. So if I go wave a magic wand and you could actually make money doing whatever it is you want to do, what would it be? And I cannot remember what you told me, but a year later, I got an email. She goes, Frank, you probably don't remember me. We flew next to each other. I used to set up exhibit hall, whatever, for conferences. And you said to me, what would you do? And she goes, I did it. I quit the setup job for conferences. I'm doing exactly what I want to do. So I think it's important that we give people permission to at least begin thinking about, and of course, now let's give them an action item, because people would say, well, that's great, Frank, but how do we make that happen? I recommend you begin whatever that is as an avocation, a side hustle. Keep your job, keep your medical benefits, but start doing that on the side just to get a taste and see if that's really what you want to do. And if it is, then slowly but surely, don't give up your day job, as they say in show business. Slowly but surely work your way to the point where you can make the jump. And I'm telling you, once you've aligned yourself with your purpose and your passion, the universe, again, is going to go, oh, thank the Lord you finally got here. Well, let's see if we can't make this work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that does happen. And I'm one of those people doing that right now. After we're done talking here, I will go see a day of patience, and then I'll have another podcast tonight.
Yeah, oh Lord.
Yeah, we're talking at like 7 a.m. my time right now. So
yeah, and I find that, again, I wake up eager to begin. There are days because of my mental illness, I have trouble getting out of bed, but I wake up eager in the morning to get back at it because it doesn't seem like a job so much as just what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So
and that's a beautiful thing.
Yes, that's the power of your podcast, is maybe we've given some people who are listening today permission to begin thinking about, well, what by the way, I've got a client who is going to do a TEDx talk on individuation. And it's called Individuation Now. Subtitle, what if who you are really isn't who you are? Again, to get people to think, I could change. I could do something else. Yeah, because a lot of us live up to other people's expectations for a great deal of time. Mm-hmm. And there's something else we want to be doing. But people, again, don't always have that thought that that's a possibility. And he hit it at about 40. He was a banker, didn't want to be a banker, but his mom wanted him to be, his wife wanted him to be. And so he was, and he just finally got fed up and thought, no, this is not who I am. And by the way, his wife divorced him. His mother never spoke to him again when he left banking. So there can be collateral damage. I'm warning your listeners. but he's happier now than he's ever been because he's doing what he's following his purpose and his passion. And it's going to make a great passion, by the way, is the key, I believe, to a great TEDx talk. If you're not inspired, you can't inspire other people. So I think when he does his individuation talk, there'll be people who are looking at go, I can choose? Oh, my Lord. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Frank. And,
my pleasure.
Yeah.
I don't get up in the morning at 4:00 for everybody, Kimberly, but this is so important because, if more people chose, more people figured out their purpose and their passion, the world would be a much better place.
It really would. All right, Frank. Well, we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Kimberly.